Welcome to the Keeping Your Breast podcast with Dr. Jen. I have been listening. I hear what you're saying, and people are asking for survivor stories. And do I have one for you today? We are going to talk about the controversial topic of DCIS, and I am delighted to have Donna Pinto here to share her story, to share her experience, and to share the inspirational work that she's done. So, Donna, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jen. It is truly a blessing to speak with you. When I first found you a little while ago, probably a couple of months ago, when you were speaking with Chris Wark, my thoughts were, holy hallelujah. Someone from the inside that gets this whole picture of what I've been trying to convey and talk about and put out there in my groups and in the world. Just a lot of what you're talking about. We're just in alignment on so many levels, and it's really, really needed. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Well,
I understand
yeah, you sure do. You know, this is a bug that bites you that you don't get rid of it, right? And once you are immersed in this world, all you want to do is make it better. And
Yep.
I know you know that.
That's
So tell us how you got immersed in this world, because like me, most people don't come in this world willingly or wantingly, right? We're placed there.
Yep. I kind of feel like sometimes I say it was like the Moses experience. Like I didn't ask for this job of,
Yeah.
it's been 14 years now for me. I've become a patient advocate and created websites and Facebook groups to try and help this controversy, debate, and dilemma the best I can. But how it all started for me, so I thought I was pretty healthy and I was very happy. And a friend of mine had recently died of cervical cancer. And I thought, and it was crushing. The best thing that I could do. Also, my grandmother died very young of breast cancer. So I was aware of it. And, I was just hearing the messages, and my doctor told me to start mammograms at age 40. And I was a good patient, and I was really healthy. But I went in for my annual mammogram. I started at 40, and 4 years into it, at age 44, just a few months after my best friend from college died, I got this diagnosis that was very strange called ductal carcinoma in situ, DCIS. Now, I never heard of this before. And the way it was explained to me, very kind of matter of fact and quickly by a nurse, she said, it's really precancer, but we treat it all like it's invasive cancer. So your options are partial mastectomy and 7 weeks of daily radiation, or a mastectomy. And this is when I just completely shut down. Like that was shocking to me, beyond shocking to hear that. And it was also the incongruency of what she had just told me, not really cancer, precancer, but, and then she went into this rant about you need to go see a medical oncologist, a radiation oncologist, have an MRI and see the nurse navigator. So I was just like spun around, like I was playing, pin the tail on the donkey.
And it's really shocking, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, they're telling you it's not cancer, and on the other hand, they're telling you that it's treated just like cancer. And it's sad because when I was training, is just after the studies of DCIS were going on. And originally we know about DCIS from historical data, because in the 80s and 90s, when it was seen on biopsy, it was not treated, it was observed. And so the reason that we know what DCIS is and what DCIS does is because we've seen the natural history of it, because we've identified it on biopsy and then not treated it. And 50% of the time, people will go on to develop invasive disease, and 50% of the time, they will not. And so there was a decision that was made that we would treat 100% of people in order to avoid the 50% from going on to have invasive disease. And while I understand that reasoning, why we didn't give thought to, well, who's going to become invasive and who's not, and can we stop that process there? Can we see what's happening there and take stock in that person and where they are in their position, station, whatever you want to call it in life, and help them to get to a better place? But there's no thought about that in our conventional medical system. And I was guilty as can be of being in that place for 20 years. So, like those words that you said, it's not cancer, but we're going to treat it like cancer anyway. I said that those words thousands of times, thousands of times.
And because it's the standard of care and that's the guidelines.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. It's not that doctors are doing anything wrong. It's they're following what the guidelines are to be safe and, just in case. But I think.
And a little bit of CYA.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Like
so
a little bit of CYA.
Intuitively, I knew there was something wrong with this. And so I started, of course, like most people, you go to Dr. Google when you get a diagnosis. And lucky for me, 2 days after this, an article came out in Medscape called Take Carcinoma Out of DCIS and Ease Off Treatment. And it was featuring the top doctors who were knowledgeable and wise and caring for women with DCIS for many years, like Dr. Laura Esserman and Dr. Ann Partridge. And I just totally aligned with that. And so I brought that article to my doctor, and she gave me, the same spiel about 50% of doctors will think this way. And, she said to me, I wouldn't wait until it's not treatable. So there was a lot of fear-inspired messaging, a lot of fear.
Which unfortunately is pervasive across the medical system. It's not just in cancer, it's in everything, right? Operate now because it could get worse. And, that reasoning is used all the time. Take this drug. That's fear is one of the biggest tools in conventional medicine.
Right. So now this article was talking about active surveillance, which is what they were doing with prostate cancer. And I thought, well, this is what I want to do. Right away, I thought, well, I want to just, sometimes it's called watch and wait. So my doctor really wasn't that supportive. So I kind of was on my own. And the other thing that happened for me, thankfully, was my friend, my very dear friend, who was like a soul sister. I went home that evening when I was given the diagnosis, and I put out an email to friends and family with good news, bad news. Good news, caught early, stage 0, what they're calling it. But the bad news is the treatments are very aggressive. And I got a lot of great support from friends and family. But my friend Adriana, who's from Colombia, she called me up and she said, no, you're not doing these invasive treatments. This isn't even cancer. I want to explain to you about how the body heals and works from the inside out. So I went over to her house the next day, and that was my crash course, the beginning of my crash course in the healing from the inside out. And she said to me, if you put your MRI off for a month, I guarantee it will be all clear if you do everything I say. So I did this radical detox. I did everything. I was a great student, great patient for her. And the MRI was clear 1 month later. But my doctor, still was insisting on surgery, which really made no sense at that point. And I had a month long of research now following Dr. Esserman and this controversy and finding out about overtreatment. So I was really emboldened. Not only did the MRI show up clear, but I had this like chicken skin on the back of my arms. I thought it was hereditary. I had an ongoing fungal infection on my foot, like an athlete's foot, and eczema, and all of that cleared up. Because like I said, I was vegetarian for many years, but I gave up dairy, alcohol, coffee, sugar, just things that were
toxins.
Like 95%, 99% healthier than most people, exercising every day, doing yoga. I kind of was the picture of health already, but I didn't know about this acid alkaline balance. So she taught me a lot of these things, and she just kind of pointed me in a direction. Then I started watching all the films and videos, and I found, people like Chris Wark. I followed him, and I was like hardcore, I'm going to study nutrition. And that's what I did. So then I got certified as a nutritionist, and I've just focused on the holistic health aspect. And that became my rather than being in fear, I was proactive. And I also was looking at the imaging problem, which I know you've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, none of this makes sense. Like, why are we still doing these things when there is information, there is great data and research? And I just became an investigator. I was like the private eye detective. And like, if you talk about these problems within the medical industry, you do get a lot of backlash, like you're crazy, or it was like heresy, like talking about the downsides of mammography. I learned real fast, and also active surveillance. Nobody wanted to talk about that, and I got like banned from groups, and I had to make my own groups. And that's why I made my own website, because I thought, if there's not support out there for this, I have to be the change that I want to see, like Gandhi said. And so I just figured out how to make a website, and I created Facebook groups. And it started with one group, but then, it was like morphing. It always goes back to the very intense fear that's perpetuated, not only from the doctors and the medical community, but then the patients in those groups can be very hardcore about regurgitating what their doctors are telling them, and the
Oh,
fear,
yeah.
oh, I wouldn't wait. People were comparing it to like Steve Jobs. Like, it just was complete disconnect from the reality of DCIS being a non-invasive.
Yeah.
80% now, they know 4 out of 5 may never become anything. It could
Yeah.
be just harmless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So obviously the problem is in the name, right? And that has to change. And I want you to know that if you're getting kicked out of groups, you're in very good company. People are so uncomfortable with the truth.
yep.
They've been lied to for so long, and they've been lying for so long that they believe their own bullshit. And it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And I've been kicked out of several physician groups over the years because, like, I'm a truth seeker,
Yep.
right? And I'm not buying the bullshit. I'm just not. And I'm calling it out.
Yeah.
And, it's astounding to me. I have these physician trolls. They like troll my page and say that, I'm providing misinformation. And like, how can you deny that X-rays cause cancer? Like, it's available. A 3-year-old knows that X-rays cause cancer. It's as obvious as the nose on your face.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, it's only a little radiation. It's only like 7 weeks of background radiation. Okay, it's 7 weeks of background radiation. Focus then on your breast tissue. The breast tissue is sensitive. It doesn't want 7 weeks of background radiation once, twice, 3, 4 times a year. It doesn't want it, right? And then,
Okay.
this whole concept of active surveillance, even that term bothers me, because there's nothing active about what they're doing. They're
Right.
basically saying, be your sitting duck self,
Yes.
irradiate you every 6 months, don't
Yep.
do anything else, don't change anything else, don't help yourself, just stay still and let me shoot you.
Yes.
And
Right.
it's crazy
I
to me.
I
And the
have been
fact that people
trying.
are so willing to accept that.
No. Well, I have been trying to infiltrate the medical community. I'm working within the research, and I'm there because I want to try to impress upon the doctors and the researchers who are involved with this that we can't just like sit back, like you said, a sitting duck, and then go and image in whatever capacity, really, because you're not changing anything at the root cause that could have created or is developing this, or what could potentially progress from a non-invasive to an invasive cancer. And so I've written blog posts. I'm sending it to Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Laura Esserman and the other doctors that I work with, like begging them, like, at least do a study. Why isn't anyone studying someone like me? I've been doing this for 14 years. I never got invasive cancer. And I also stopped using the imaging that was creating the overdiagnosis, which is mammography.
Yeah.
I stopped in 2011 because I got the bonk over the head. You know, how many times do you need to be bonked to get the scare? And when I understood overdiagnosis, which is a very, very difficult concept for people,
Yeah.
my dad was arguing with me, Donna, that's not even a word. Finally, it's been put into the National Library of medical terms now.
Yeah.
So this is what I write about, but it's like nobody gets this.
Well, that is the leg that mammography is standing on, right? They're standing on that leg because to them, they will say that there's been a reduction in deaths of cancer, but the reduction that they're talking about is a percentage because they're screening more people and they're finding these meaningless subclinical lesions that would have never gone on to become anything clinically meaningful. And some of them, a percentage of them, are actually caused by repeated mammograms.
Exactly.
And then they're saying that they're curing these women, but these women would have never died of breast cancer. Their lesions would have never been clinically significant. And then you take that group of women and you treat them and you double or triple their risk of getting heart disease, which is the real threat. The number one threat to a woman's life is heart disease. And then you take someone who is already vulnerable, as you know, the older we get and the less circulating estrogen we have, the more damage happens to our blood vessels, the more damage that happens to our heart, the more damage that happens to our brain, the more damage that happens to our bones. And you take that person and then you radiate them, and they are even more susceptible to that damage, even more susceptible to that injury. And so we are creating a lot of illness. We are creating a lot of morbidity, and there's no recognition of it. And in fact, people like me that speak out, people like you that speak out, were criticized.
Yeah.
But when you look at the absolute number of women that die every year from breast cancer, it's 43,000.
Right.
So they are not impacting the bottom line at all, because if they were, we would see less deaths from breast cancer, but we don't.
That's
All
right.
we see is overdiagnosis and overtreatment and taking credit for saving lives that didn't need to be saved. Right?
Yeah. And the charities are part of the problem, the pink charities. And now we're also creating the emotional toll on these women. This is what I deal with every day. They're off the charts, and I will give out my phone number and I'll give my email and my text. And it takes like sometimes a few months for women to just realize they're not going to die. Like, it's crazy. There's such a disconnect. And my heart just goes out to all these women. I mean, it's like over 40 to 50,000 women a year that are in this overdiagnosed bucket.
Yeah.
And even people that know me and know my website, like that get a diagnosis or maybe get some callback or something, they don't even want to look at it because they just want to listen to the doctor. So the doctor is so valuable. This is why what you're doing, Dr. Jen, is so important, because you have that credibility if you're saying this, because I'm a patient advocate, and I have a story, but I'm not the credible expert that they need to hear it from. That's why we need the credible expert radiologist or someone that can give that alternative that we can trust. And I know that you're working on, new imaging, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah.
I've just, been waiting. I'm like on the edge of my seat with this.
What state do you live in?
I live in California, in San Diego.
Oh, so
which is near Beverly Hills. Yeah.
It's available to you right
now. I know. I'm putting,
you don't have to wait.
I know.
Yeah.
I'll be going.
Yeah.
We'll be going. It's just a couple hours away.
So it's so interesting about the radiologist. I don't know how that's going to progress, because there's so much unlearning that has to happen. I mean, they have, since the mammographic screening program was rolled out in the 1970s, they have genuinely believed that they were doing the right thing, and they continue to believe that they're doing the right thing. And I think it would be a really hard pill for them to swallow to think otherwise. So it's so hard for them to think otherwise, because like they really feel as if, oh, well, we're using this super safe modality and we're finding these cancers and we're saving lives. Like, they believe this, they
Yes.
genuinely believe it. And so I try not to respond too harshly when I'm trolled, because like, it questions their very existence. It questions what they've been doing with their life. It
Yeah.
questions whether or not they're actually harming people instead of
Yeah.
helping people. Right.
Right.
So this is a very, very tough pill to swallow. And I get it.
Yeah.
So, I allow them
Yeah.
a little bit of leeway. I don't allow them too much leeway, because in the end, I have to tell the truth.
Right.
And I don't want my sympathy for the predicament that they're in to confuse the issue. Right. And the
Right.
issue is that the x-rays cause cancer, and that there there is some element of they're dissociating from the truth.
Right.
Right, because they
Exactly.
have to.
That's a good point. They're dissociating from the truth. And
Yeah.
that's why the movement has to come from empowering the women. But it's also very, very difficult to convince people of this when they're being constantly bombarded with the messaging that early detection with mammography saves lives. So it's a constant, constant, constant. Even me to this day, my doctor, my primary care will tell me every year, you're due for your mammogram. I'm like, it should be in my record now that I don't do that, but they're required. So it's coming at women from every angle. And people look at me like I'm completely out of my mind when I say I don't use mammography.
Yeah. It's a
And
checkbox for them. It's
so
a checkbox for them.
I put forth a lot of, there's a great science writer who's written multiple articles on it's okay to opt out of mammography and all the studies that have been done, the downsides. I have a whole web page called Be Wise, talking about informed consent. I've tried from every angle to get this messaging across without creating this, feud. I don't want
Yeah.
to argue and fight with anyone, just like I
That's
know,
right.
I
That's
want
right.
people to be informed just as
Yeah.
you do. Like,
Yeah.
it's our right as informed
Well,
it's
as you said, I mean, this is your Moses moment. And for those of you who are not familiar with that part of history, Moses was chosen by God, but Moses did not want that responsibility. And in fact, he questioned God's judgment in identifying him as the person. And he gave multiple reasons as to why he shouldn't do it. But in the end, he accepted that responsibility. And in the end, you have accepted yours. And
yes,
you know that you're on a mission, and you know that this is what you were meant to do. I mean, you were given this voice and this platform for a reason, and you won't convince everyone, just like I won't convince everyone.
yeah,
But you still have to keep going, because you know that you're on the right side of history, and you know that you're doing the right thing. I do
yes.
want to ask you about this radical detox, because I think that people are very curious.
Mhm.
Because as we said before, active surveillance to me means that you're actively doing things to improve your health, which is exactly what you did during that month.
Mhm.
Right? It's
Yeah,
not like you spent that month saying, gosh, I hope that the DCIS is gone by the next study. You actively did things.
right. Yes.
So tell us about that.
So, like I said, I was pretty healthy, but I was a vegetarian, and then my friend, said, here's what you're going to eliminate, right? And that was the dairy and the coffee and the alcohol, and I wasn't excessive in any of these things by any means, but still, I took it. I basically ate like a raw vegetables, mostly raw vegetables, for a few weeks. And then we did like a weekend just juicing tonics and teas. And, it was like a month long. I think I lost like 10 pounds. And people were worried about me because I really didn't need to lose weight. But, my friend Adriana said, oh, no, don't worry. I'll just come back. But that, it just got me, it was like a jump start. And it got me really excited about, nutrition and food as medicine became sort of my mission for myself. And then just, I'm like you, a truth seeker. I wanted to know. I never heard of the acid alkaline balance. How is that possible? And I was getting those test strips, that you pee on. And it was like fun for me. And I was doing it with my husband, and, he wasn't doing the same level as me, a little bit, gave up coffee and alcohol with me. But you could see the difference between our diets and what I was doing, what he was doing. I was like really bright green and he was more like a yellow. And so it just gave me something to focus on rather than the fear of what the doctors were just handing me, this like what happened with Sandra Lee. She's a celebrity chef. She was told that you have a ticking time bomb. A lot of women are told this, or they think this. And this is what's perpetuated. So I didn't think that way at all. I was like, this is nothing. This is the way Adriana took the fear away. She said the fear is the worst part of this, because it's not just the food you're eating in the diet. It's the stress that this is putting on you.
Yeah.
And also, let's look at the other
power of that imagery, right? Yeah. Like when they tell you that you have cancer, like that's a bell that cannot be unrung.
That's right.
Right. And even if they say, well, it's precancerous, but we're going to treat you like you have cancer, the second you're in that space, that I'm being treated like I have cancer space, it's so hard to get out of it. And that imagery is really powerful. And I believe that God is in charge of the world without question. I believe that we all have a plan, but at the same time, we can control what happens in our moment to moment. We can. And when you are filled with imagery of, I have cancer, I'm going to die of cancer, you are for sure going to die of cancer, because that is the chemistry that you're going to create.
Yeah.
And so we have to be super duper careful with our thoughts. And the medical industry is not helping, because they're lighting that spark, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it's still happening today. What happened to me 14 years ago, things are changing, and it's getting a little bit better, maybe because we have some studies and they're a little more like open to what they consider active monitoring or surveillance now, but still, they're not communicating in a way that is calming and reassuring that this is not anything to freak out about. Like, I didn't even know what oncology meant when I got the diagnosis. That's how naive I was. I had to look it up. I was pretty clueless because I didn't really, even though my grandmother died of breast cancer, my best friend died of cervical cancer, my other grandmother died of pancreatic cancer. So cancer's all around us, but we're really uneducated as far as what is cancer. So when I was given the diagnosis of DCIS, I thought I had like a gangrene going through my body. That was the imaging. I mean, and I do believe in self-fulfilling prophecies, and your thoughts become things. And so you have to shift that. So that's why I'm forever eternally grateful to my friend, because she took me out of that space and put me in this other I call it health enlightenment. I was on my way like this, like really fast. I got out of it within a couple of days, was not in fear, but then it does creep in. And this is why I'm there for women out there, because every year when they do go for any kind of scanning, I hear back from them. They're nervous, they're scared. What if, oh, I feel this thing. And it is for the rest of your life, that when you're given a diagnosis. And that's why I feel it's important to prevent overdiagnosis, not just over treatment. There's a conference now called Preventing Overdiagnosis, and I've been asked to be on the planning committee last year. I was the only patient advocate, because I'm putting the messaging out there. I'm on Twitter and getting researchers from all over the world connecting with me. Yeah. So there's some positive movements being made.
Amazing.
Yeah, not as much in the US, but there's a lot going on in the Netherlands and in Denmark and in Australia and
in all the places that have abandoned their mammographic screening programs because they simply don't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what happened in Switzerland was they were, the report showed that they said that it should be abolished. But what happened was it continued, because even there, they're not listening. And I'm like, what is wrong with our system? This is so wrong. And I'm so passionate about just helping the people, on the ground floor get the messaging so that they don't fall down this rabbit hole, because that's what it is. It's a cascade of events, and they have no clue when they're called back, and then they go for the biopsy, and then they need another wide excision. I didn't know what any of this was, but I went along until I was told, the word mastectomy came up. I was like, whoa, this is out of control here. And I was even told at the end, before I left my doctor, she said, your breast is like spoiled soup. It's just there and it's not worth saving. And that was when I said goodbye. I mean, imagine that imaging.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. And then she said to
Oh,
me,
that is
she said,
horrible.
don't be stupid, Donna. At least do 3 weeks of double dose radiation. When I was like, they couldn't get the margin. So this is what happens to women who and I had a low risk. I had the oncotype, I had decision RT, I had a second pathology opinion. It was low grade, yet they wanted me to remove my breast, and they put all this fear for 2 years. And then I said, I am done.
Enough.
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 And that's why I said I got the bonk on the head, because I was still sort of trusting a little bit with
Yeah.
the system.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, this is wrong. And so that's when I made my website. And that's when I poured all my energy into studying nutrition, following everyone out there talking about holistic prevention, functional, naturopathic, integrative. But the integrative doctors that are associated with these big centers, they're still following the guidelines.
I
They
know.
can't go against it. So there's a little bit of, people have to be careful who they go to, because the integrative MD I went to said, there's just no money in studying someone like you, and they have to go along with their colleagues. I was
Well,
so
I
disappointed.
think it's bigger than that. I think we forget what our medical system is based on, and that's just it's money, and money makes the world go round. And all of these guidelines are brought to us by the same people that told us cigarettes were safe. And then they told us that, I don't know if you remember a drug called Vioxx,
Oh yeah.
that Vioxx came onto the market, and they knew very well that Vioxx caused heart attacks, but it was a risk they were willing to take to make that money. And then OxyContin,
Yep.
the OxyContin story on the market, and people have written one's a drama, I guess, like two dramatization stories, Dope Sick and then Painkillers,
Yep.
about the Sackler family and the development of this monster of a drug that killed I don't even know how many people and ruined I don't even know how many lives, and the cost to the system that happened and is still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's the jab, right? And I don't even want to get into it, but just the bottom line is that there have been at many times along the cycle and through the years where we have very much known that what we are doing is harmful.
Yes.
And yet it makes so much money that we don't do the right thing. We don't
Mm-hmm.
do the right thing. And I think in the beginning, kind of doctors are trained that this is safe and no one asks questions. And then they get, 10 and 20 and 30 years into their career, and they can't even question anymore because they've lost their ability to think critically. And that's what you're seeing. And
Yeah.
even I think a large problem with the integrative docs is that they're not specifically trained in cancer. And so if you're specifically trained in cancer, like I've come at it from this totally unique perspective, because I was a cancer doctor for 20 years first.
Right.
And once I trained in functional medicine, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how
Mm-hmm.
much damage I've done over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough spot to be in. I mean, you have to do a lot of self-reckoning at that point and say, I have to forgive myself for that because I did it unknowingly. But if you are an integrative medicine doctor who doesn't understand that side of things, and you just feel like you have to follow the guidelines, they're not questioning it either.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of integrative medicine doctors that are telling people to go get mammograms
Yeah.
and do things that I don't do. I
Yeah.
don't do and I don't recommend. And we know when we look at the societies that don't screen, right? Those women are not dying of breast cancer at any higher rate than the women here,
No,
right?
all the studies show there's not any overall survival
There's
is
no
zero.
overall
Yeah.
survival
I know.
benefit is zero, zero.
It's amazing when I have all this on my page, like the perception versus the actual, and I
Yeah.
have the Harding Center risk literacy. It shows it all with the little people and the dots. I mean, there's so much that has infographics that have been put out there, and yet they ignore it. A lot of them, the doctors and the system and the nonprofits, they will criticize it like that's based on flawed data or this or that, the studies that don't support it.
Yeah.
But what I want people to know is they have to look at who's funding whatever's being said, and is it part of their career? Are they getting any money off it? This is why I have intentionally never monetized my website and all that I'm doing with my support groups. I just haven't, because I want to be pure in this, and I
Yeah.
do make
You
money
want to
from
have
other
the
things.
utmost integrity,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I wish I could work for free, but
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah. I'm very,
I can't.
like I
When I
said,
can, I will.
yes. No, and it's a blessing because I'm paying it forward. It was given to me by my friend, and it was something that is like my pay it forward. It's my blessing. I mean, I do make money in other capacities, but for this website and the Facebook groups, I do as a volunteer pay it forward. But I also want to just mention about the system with when I was given the diagnosis, I did ask about diet. And the nurse said to me, no, there's nothing you can do, but would you like a prescription for Xanax? So this is also being doled out. And I just want to mention my personal experience. My mother, took prescription medications from doctors that were psychotropic medications. This tortured her and eventually killed her after 4 years of hell, which I, helped her through.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very, sad system that we've got in place. So now we're giving these diagnoses, we're giving, very, very strong benzodiazepines and
Yep.
antidepressants
Yep.
that are so hard to get off of. I follow doctors who are trying to help now with that. So there's just so many layers to this that are just heart wrenching.
I agree with you. I agree with
So
you.
that's why what
And
you're doing is so incredible. And I've watched a number of your podcasts. I'm sharing it with my groups. I'm just going to blast it out there. You might think of me as an amplifier. I'm just looking for
love
the
it. I love
experts
it
that I can
because
amplify.
I'm on a mission to help millions of women. And the only way that I'm going to do that is by people like you spreading the word. And I know that you're on that same mission because you don't want people to suffer unnecessarily.
Right.
And together we can prevent people from suffering, and not only prevent them from suffering, but from really knowing real health.
Exactly.
Because that detox program that you went on for 1 month, it wrote the script for the rest of your life.
Yes. And 14 years later, I'm basically still doing that same program. It's not a diet, it's a
A
lifetime
lifestyle.
commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lifetime commitment. I
Yeah.
love it. I've been taking pictures of my food for 12 years and trying I do inspire some people.
Yeah.
I did a program through UCSD that was a natural healing and cooking program, and I was training to be an instructor for that, but they charged a lot of money, and I just also feel like not everybody can afford to go to these programs and do these
For
things. So
sure.
I created a little nonprofit called Give Wellness, and I was going out to the schools and to the low income communities and teaching demos how to make these spring rolls and, colored wraps and, great recipes that I put out there.
Yeah.
I do have some great
Yeah.
recipes too it's
And
not that complicated.
no, it's not. And we do need to start with the children. We
Yes,
do,
we do.
because we need to teach the next generation to be better.
Absolutely.
We
And
absolutely need to do that.
they will get
Um,
it.
they will. So, I'm so grateful to you and your Moses moment.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to ask you,
Mhm.
if you were running the world, how would you handle this?
I would tell women the absolute truth, like you talked about, that first of all, give informed consent about whether or not to screen for any cancer, because the majority of screening programs have no overall survival, oversold because of propaganda and marketing and advertising. And I studied that in college, so I'm tuned into it. And I would teach people how to heal and how to prevent disease or illness, and create health from the inside out through food, lifestyle, eliminating toxins as well as toxic relationships. And that's a big one. People
Mm-hmm.
talk about stress. Yes, we all
Yeah.
have stress, but there's a lot. I have like a wheel of healing that I created. And so that's kind of the thing, like with emotional, spiritual. So I got set on my spiritual path as a teenager. I was in a car accident, a friend of mine died, and I questioned the religion I grew up with, and I searched for answers. And so that kind of led me on finding happiness and what is the meaning of life. So this all plays in because I was already at a high level of consciousness. And so we have to take that into, health is same thing, high consciousness health, where we're eating organic food, not just for ourselves, but for the planet and for supporting those organic farmers, really not supporting things that come in a package and things that are being laced with chemicals. Like we have to really be conscious. And that's my vision, is creating that, almost like go back to when there was just farming, and people ate from their lands. And
Yeah.
we've tried growing some food, but we've had birds and rabbits and not quite successful yet. But
Critters.
I
Critters
create,
get in the way.
we have some mint and basil, and try to always support the farmers markets and the local farmers, and eating with a high level of consciousness, I
Mhm.
think. And that and
I love
also
it.
skincare and cosmetics and all these things that we're putting on our body or in our body, have an enormous impact on health and longevity and attitude, and just making sure you're not sitting in front of the TV and watching the negative news, constant negative news, right? CNN. Someone mentioned that was constant negative news.
Oh my God, for
So,
sure it is.
I think we're just always evolving. And like what the last few years have taught me is that there's a lot of divisiveness. People are just not open and willing, and there's something wrong with that energy. But then you have to let those people go. Sometimes just let it go.
Mhm.
There's enough people that want the information,
Mhm.
that will go, thank you, be blessed. I have people all over the world now blessing me because I know that I've helped them. And that to me
It's so
is wonderful.
beautiful. That's
So
so
I'm going to
beautiful.
keep going. And then just hopefully we'll create this movement all together with doctors like you, and people who get it. My philosophy is either you get it, take time to get it, or you never get it. So forget about the ones that never get it.
Yeah.
It's take the
Yeah.
ones that take time is the ones we're working with, because you and I get it, and hopefully we can help others to
Yep.
understand this.
Absolutely. I love your truth. Talking about giving informed consent so that people know what the screening programs actually do, which is make a lot of money, but don't make a lot of impact. Know how to prevent disease and heal, know how to create health from the inside out, take the trash out. And that means the emotional relationships that are that are taxing, the toxins that are in your home. Find happiness and meaning, practice high conscious health, and what we put in, on, and around us really matters. Donna, thank you so much for being here today, for doing what you do, for sharing your story, for being so very brave,
Thank you.
because it's hard to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable, to allow for the negativity and the criticism. So this should be the only Teflon in your life, is the ability to allow that negativity to just bounce off of you and disperse away from you. And you should only keep shining your light. I am so grateful to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. Right
It's
back at
Dr.
you.
Jen. Oh, thank you. Bye for now.